Hey, what's up, guys? Your agent Tyler here. Today we're going to do a book review on The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Very highly recommended book, really action-packed book. It's talked a lot about in the real estate industry, obviously with Gary Keller being the founder and owner of Keller Williams. But not for it's for good reason. This is a really good book, something I try to read every year just because it kind of brings back these fundamentals that really can change the course of your life. So with that, I'm going to jump in. As always, if you have different thoughts or other takeaways than me, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Also, a like or subscribe would be greatly appreciated. It kind of just tells YouTube that this is worth watching and maybe some valuable content in here. So with that, let's jump in. All right, guys, so to start out, Gary talks about the domino effect. And what essentially that means is, typically when you kick over dominoes, they're kind of equal size, but a domino, in fact, has the power to knock over another domino 50% larger than it. So if we knock one over, the next one is 50% bigger, and then that one has the power to knock over one 50% bigger than that, and so on. And so I'll put a graphic over here that describes what I'm talking about. But essentially, if you line those up, each one being 50% larger, by the 31st one, you would have a domino the size of Mount Everest, or the height of Mount Everest. And by the 57th one, it would be as tall as the distance from Earth to the moon. So you can see it doesn't take long for this kind of geometric progression to kick in and really start to kind of compound how big of things just kind of a small action can take. So the whole point of him talking about that is breaking down these big goals or big purposes in life into lead dominoes, is the phrase he uses, of what's the thing that you can do now that you have the power, control, ability to do that will kind of put you in the right direction to start knocking down bigger dominoes that will eventually get to this big goal. But you shouldn't be intimidated by the large goal. And often in real estate, you hear these big successful people who own thousands of units, and it can be intimidating to think, how do I start? But maybe a lead domino is buying your first house. If you buy one, the second one's not as difficult. You kind of understand the process. You probably learned some things. Buy two or three, you've learned some more. So maybe then a 12 unit doesn't sound out of question for you. And then after a 12 unit, maybe you're ready to scale. So that's kind of the point of the domino effect. And he goes into much more detail in here, but very powerful thing there. He also talks about the 6 lies that derail us from success. I'll talk about the 2 that I thought were the most impactful, but recommend you check them all out. The first one is multitasking, and he gives lots of research on the ineffectiveness of multitasking, and really that it's just a fallacy. He says when you multitask, you're essentially just guaranteeing that you're going to do 2 things you're going to do 2 things wrong, or 2 things won't have the outcome they would have if you were to just focus on one at a time. And he says, we don't allow surgeons or air pilots to multitask because we kind of fundamentally know that the dangers of it. So why do we do it to ourselves while we're working towards our big thing in life, or our purpose? So he says, kind of give your purpose in life kind of that same importance of a surgeon or a doctor. So really good stuff there. But basically, your mind doesn't have the power to actually focus on 2 different tasks at once. You might be able to walk and chew bubble gum, or something that your subconscious can do with your body, but you truly cannot spread focus in 2 areas at once. So good stuff there. The second lie is that willpower is on will call. So basically, that you can't expect yourself to always perform optimally if you're not prepared, or you don't take breaks. So he refers to he has the analogy of willpower being just like your cell phone battery. You wake up and it's fully charged, but when you go throughout the day, you're making, every decision you make, every thought that you think through, kind of everything that like taxes your mind to do, it slowly drains down that battery. And if you don't take breaks and kind of recharge that, you're not going to perform optimally. And just so kind of build your schedule around that. Do your most important things when you have that full battery. And if you know you have something important later in the day, maybe take a break or recharge prior to that. So good stuff there. But the main focus of the book, obviously, is the one thing. But there's a focusing question that he calls out that I want to read through. But the point of this question, he says in here, life is a question. And, to get better outcome, you have to get better answers, you have to ask better questions. And so this is the question that he really, he built strategically in the fact that every kind of word in here was strategically thought through, and kind of the anatomy of this question is very powerful. So I'm going to read it to you just so you have it. We'll throw it up on screen too. It says, this is the question you should ask yourself every day. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And so you can apply this to anything in life. And he kind of goes through different scenarios and how he uses this, but recommend you check it out. But and we'll talk just in a second about how you can apply this. But you should always, it kind of goes back to the multitasking thing. You should have that one thing that you're focused on, not trying to split your attention between different ways, and really kind of continue to ask yourself that. He talks about big and specific questions, and then like when you're setting goals, and also goal setting to the now, so backing in your goals to today. And so kind of bringing both of those concepts together, I thought it would be helpful to use an example. So if we said I want $1 million someday, that would not be a big and specific task, that'd be more general. But if we said in 10 years from now I want to save $1 million, so the way that you goal set to the now, and that would be your one thing, that would be kind of your big thing. And for this example, we'll rule out any market returns. We'll assume you're actually going to save, your goal is to save $1 million in 10 years. So you would say, okay, 10 years from now I want $1 million. So what's my 5-year goal or target to be on track for that? And so what's the one thing I can do so that in 5 years I'm on track for that? Or your 5-year target would be 500,000. So then you break that down into, well, what's my 1-year target so that I'm on track for my 5-year target? So I need 100,000 in the bank in 1 year to be on track for my 5-year target. What's the thing I can do in, breaking it down monthly? If I want 100,000 in 1 year, what do I need to save per month to be on track for that? So I need to save $8,333 a month, and then break it down to the day. So, that divided by 30 days, I need to save $277 per day to be on track for my 10-year plan of $1 million. And so you can even break that down to the hour if for some goals of, of what can I do right now to be on track for my 1-day goal to save $277 a day. And if you think through that daily, kind of that's my lead domino of what can I do today. Maybe it's right now I can go out and talk to a client, and that will lead to, maybe closing on some transaction. But you can kind of see breaking down kind of all those concepts together of, if identifying a lead domino, goal setting to the now, and identifying your one thing with big and specific goals. So very thoughtful exercise, and you can think through that. You can really do that with anything that you want to achieve in life. I just thought $1 million would be a helpful exercise because it's very simple and easy to understand. So the other key thing with that is time blocking, and that goes back into the willpower piece. If you need to think about your one thing or identifying that lead domino, how do you carve out time in your schedule while your willpower is high so that you can really think through this stuff and kind of plan out your life. So lastly, he talks about the 4 thieves of success. And one of the big things that I only took one of those out, but the big thing for me, or one of the things that I am guilty of, is not saying no. He said you need to learn how to say no more often, because when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So, and often, he talks about, it feels good to say yes and be able to help someone and feel needed and feel like, you're really making an impact on someone, but often we say yes to others and help them with their things, and by doing that, we're saying no to the important things or the big goals and kind of our one thing. We're putting that aside to help someone else out. So you need to really think through what you're saying yes to, and often we're all guilty of saying yes too often and not saying no enough. So a couple ways he talks also about, you don't have to be a jerk and just say like no, but you can maybe suggest like, hey, have you looked at this, or read this article, maybe this will point you in the right direction, and then come back to me if not. Or if you get asked the same questions a lot, maybe you could record a video on it and just share a link with someone when you get asked. So kind of ways to protect your time and keep the focus and keep your availability open to dedicate time to your one thing. So another big thing, and kind of the coolest thing I took away from the book, was his talk about happiness. And so I'm going to read a couple excerpts here around happiness. But he basically says people have been studying how to be happy for years, and Gary Keller's probably knocking on the $1 billion mark. So he talks a lot about money and happiness and fulfillment. So I'm going to read a couple excerpts. Happiness happens on the way to fulfillment. There are 5 factors that contribute to happiness: positive emotion, pleasure, achievement, relationships, engagement, and meaning. He talks a little bit about more of those, but financially wealthy people are those who have enough money coming in without having to work to finance their purpose in life. And I thought that was super impactful. He says most of the people that he finds that are happy, they have a purpose they're working towards, and they're wealthy in the fact that they don't have to work to kind of meet their to pay for their daily, I guess, needs or their wants, but they have financial ability to really take care of those things and focus on their purpose and kind of live to do kind of what they're passionate about. To be financially wealthy, you must have a purpose for your life. In other words, without a purpose, you'll never know when you have enough money, and you can never be financially wealthy. It isn't that having more money won't make you happy. To a point, it certainly can, but then it stops. For more money to continue to motivate you will depend on why you want more. So that's even more, I guess, reason to identify your purpose and know what the whole point of it all is. Why are you working for this money? What is it going towards? And without doing that, you'll never know when you've achieved it or when you've hit that mark. So really good stuff in here. And for me, I kind of read this and just took some time to think through it. I mean, it's, I think, very deep and has the ability to really pivot and set you on a different course or, a different, put you on track to do some great things. So lastly, I'm going to read a final quote in here that kind of sums up a lot of why you do this and the whole point of it in the first place around life. So he says, go live a life worth living where in the end you'll be able to say, I'm glad I did it, not I wish I had. A life worth living might be measured in many ways, but the one way that stands above all others is that living a life of no regrets. He talks about, there is a book, I guess, in here where it's called The Top 5 Regrets of Dying People, where the guy that wrote it, I guess, he had, in some cahoots with hospice, or he was around a lot of people who were kind of on their way out, and often their biggest regret was regretting not doing more things or kind of taking more risk and kind of going after it. So I think a lot of wisdom there in taking that. and a really good way to kind of think through and bring that mortality piece into a daily action or your daily thoughts. I think that really helps shape a vision and a purpose for you. So with that, we'll go ahead and call it a wrap, and let me know if you have other thoughts or different things stuck out to you, but this was my take on the one thing. And as always, a like or subscribe would be greatly appreciated. We'll catch you next time. Peace.